All right, guys, let's welcome Megan from Vexed to new pod here, notfest.com. Megan, how are we tonight?
I'm good, thank you. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Doing good. Doing real good.
So when Calling Culture came out, you came on the Notfest Twitch show with me, and that's one of the bands, like, I found a lot of bands, doing those interviews because I had to do so many. I would get pitched so many bands, and you guys and like Memphis May Fire and a few bands snuck through and just really like blew me away. And I loved Calling Culture. When we did the Pulse of the Maggots Fest, I got to introduce you guys on that. And then, obviously this new album, it's absolutely amazing. What is it? Negative Energy.
Yeah.
Written down.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. It's a crushing record.
Thank you. Yeah, we went a bit mad. We went very heavy on this one.
Nice. So yeah, when this interview is out, the album will be out, but make sure to check out Negative Energy out Napalm Records. And let's dive into a couple tracks before we dive into your top 5 new metal albums of all time. Obviously the first track that jumps out to me is Anti-Fetish, which, when you came on the show, you were talking about how female vocalist in metal bands had kind of been fetishized back then. So I was like, well, maybe she's kind of going off of that. And then diving into the lyrics, it does seem that it was attacking not only journalists, but maybe fans and just kind of the whole metal scene of like, yes, women can be in metal bands. Please, next question type stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. With the first sort of album campaign, the amount of questions I would get about other women, and just not about my own band, it was just like, why don't you ask them? It gets a little bit frustrating when it's like, so what do you think of XYZ? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I haven't listened to them. And they're like, oh, we assumed you would have because you're a woman and they're women. And
you guys don't have a text chain?
Exactly. Yeah, we're all in a WhatsApp group together. So it was just, getting a bit frustrating. And then obviously you're always going to get a lot of misogyny in everywhere in life, but sadly in the metal scene as well. We praise ourselves as being an accepting community, but a lot of the time it's not. I mean, on our latest single, I got told to go back into the kitchen where I belong. So it's still alive and well.
That is always the funny part when it comes to metal is how accepting it seems at times, and then then you get the show your tits guy, and you're like, really, did we just move backwards?
Yeah,
it took us 50 years to get to this point, where car commercials are using AC/DC and whatnot, and it's like, really, that it's like, get back in the kitchen, man. You're like, what are you talking about?
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Beat your ass.
It's crazy. But yeah, like, I'm lucky that it doesn't affect me anymore, and I can just, it does make me giggle, and we write songs about it and it inspires music. So that's great. I just hope it doesn't put off any other people from wanting to do it. But yeah, there's always going to be dickheads. You just got to learn how to ignore.
I mean, personally speaking, I think anytime I think anytime there's a woman anywhere in metal, I mean, I don't even care whether you're singing or whether you're even doing merch or whatever it is. I think that's always an inspiration for people, because it does show that you can make something of yourself when it comes to this kind of music, whereas a lot of people look at this as still, I mean, not for nothing, my parents are still like, so when are you growing out of this phase? And I'm like, I'm almost 50. I don't think that's so I think that, it just shows people that there is something that's viable about this kind of career choice.
Yeah, of course.
I think that anytime there's whether it's somebody like you who's up front and really up there, or like a band like Bloodywood where it's a bunch of Indian people, I think all of that is extremely, extremely important when it comes to this culture. So I do think that you're influencing people even without realizing it.
Thank you. Sure. I hope so. Yeah, we need more variety, diversity. To be able to call ourselves, accepting people, we need to have all kinds of people, not just the only ones you'll accept.
Right. That's exactly.
Ironically.
Yeah, that's the thing with most metalheads too, is where they want metal to be the most popular genre. But then if somebody like a pop star wears a Metallica shirt, everybody comes out of the woodwork like attacking that person. And I'm like, like, hey, Kim Kardashian wearing a Slayer shirt, maybe a few Kim Kardashian fans might go check out Slayer and enjoy it, leave it be kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, gatekeepers in this sort of culture is always a weird thing because again, it's it's something that people feel so strongly about that when somebody does something slightly averse, it's suddenly like how like it's funny because they're always like it's like Slayer spikes and and then it's just like wait, she's wearing a shirt, dude. What is that? Like suddenly this is what offends you? Like that's kind of weird, It's like suddenly a Bud Light can is all it takes. Wow, I didn't think it was going to be that easy.
I know, it's so strange. Like, big picture is, we're a bunch of outcasts that a lot of us have probably been picked on or something in the past. This is why we're emotional people. This is why we're drawn to this kind of music. And then the second somebody else is liking it, it's the worst thing in the world. So, yeah, it's a very contradictory way of appreciating metal by just hating everyone that does it. So.
Right.
But
I agree with that.
But we're getting there. Like there is like a new wave of fans and people that aren't putting up with it anymore and are like putting more emphasis on the good than the bad. So I think we're getting there.
No, I agree.
So the song like Trauma, Euphoria, kind of in the press release, it talks about the euphoria you feel like maybe when you kind of settle in to maybe revert back to pre-trauma and things like that. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think because the whole album in general is based on grief, and there's sort of moments in the grieving process that I think a lot of people forget to kind of talk about, and I did as well, which is those happy moments when you forget about the thing that happened. And then you suddenly remember, oh crap, I'm supposed to be sad and depressed. And because your brain hasn't felt happiness in so long, you go from such a high to such a crashing low. And then all the guilt that comes with it, like, oh my God, I'm such a bad person. I shouldn't have felt happy. How could I have forgotten about the bad thing that happened? I'm such an awful person. And it's sort of, the song is almost like a love song to trauma, and it's about how trauma can become your safe space and depression can become your safe space, and it can become addictive, and you don't ever want to leave that space because you know it well. And I've definitely been a victim to trapping myself in a depression, because if you don't leave it, then there's no room for guilt and there's no room for upsetting yourself or anything like that. But really, we can't. Nobody can live in that forever. You've got to try and come out of it. But it's a hard thing. And the Trauma Euphoria is kind of just explaining those little glimpses of happiness and how weird they can be, like how guilty they can make you feel.
Yeah, I was reading the lyrics to the song yesterday, and I was like, wow, like what a. It's funny because you think about in this kind of realm of metal, especially just the subject matter of trauma, whether it's abuse or neglect or whatever. And then the idea of kind of this sort of flipping it on its head with trauma, trauma euphoria, it's such I just thought it was such a unique concept. At first, I thought Trauma Euphoria was the name of the record, and I was like, holy shit, that's a great name for a record.
It almost was. It almost was. We were tied between that and Negative Energy, and we went with Negative Energy. But
well, the funny thing is actually I have the album title written down as Trauma Energy. So so that's like why I had to catch myself a minute ago. I was like, I know that's not the album title.
It's been called a lot of things. Don't worry, it's all right.
No, but I
back
really,
in the kitchen. No.
Yeah, but I really do
kitchen
think
core.
that concept
kitchen
is this
core. Sorry,
kitchen core. barefoot in the kitchen core.
Yeah.
But I just thought the concept of it was so fascinating, because in a weird way that when you think about what we're doing with the whole new pod thing and new metal in general, that's kind of where a lot of trauma type of lyrics, I don't want to say originated by any means, because that's not true, but bands like Korn and whatnot, really started to really bring that out. And especially after doing the Stained deep dive for Breaking the Cycle, trauma is something that really defines this sort of genre of music. So to sort of almost bring that trauma euphoria out of it, it's almost like that's kind of what we're getting in a weird way when we listen to this music as well. Is this kind of like, kind of like sort of reliving this trauma, but in such a different way that now makes us happy in a way.
It's perfectly said. Like, it's so strange how you can find so much comfort and enjoyment about, like, while sharing your trauma with somebody else.
Right.
It's such a weird feeling, but
yeah, it's a unique form of therapy in a really weird way.
Yeah, it is.
It's strange too if you listen to a lot of podcasts or interviews and things, and you hear some of your favorite people maybe have gone through similar things. It's like, oh, I'm not unique in this, or oh, that being poor and not being able to eat and making a mayonnaise sandwich or something as a kid is a thing. Other people have gone through that and they've thrived through that. So yeah, I mean, we all live through our things, and hearing other people talk about it openly, kind of like, oh, maybe I'm not alone out here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that applies to whatever age you are, especially when you're younger, because I remember being, in difficult situations as a kid, and the metal community, and especially the new metal music, made me feel not alone. But there are moments as an adult as well where you're like, shit, I'm an adult, I'm a grown-up, I actually have to deal with this stuff, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't think I'll ever know what I'm doing. And weirdly, you kind of forget that, like, we're pretty much the same as we were as kids. We just drive cars and have jobs now. So we just got to figure out what we're doing, and music still does really help.
Yeah, it is still very much that connective tissue for a lot of us, because back when I was in high school, it was Metallica and Megadeth and Slayer and all these kinds of bands, and then as I grew up, it was then it became Korn and Deftones and all these other bands, but it really is that connective tissue to go, like, it's kind of funny when I think about it, like when you think about I guess the generation maybe above us, it's like, do you ever go like, oh, I remember how much Elvis got me through with shaking his hips, and it's a different dynamic, between like, what we're all going through versus like somebody that's like a little bit older than us, but it's like, but our music is so much more visceral that it's like, man, when I heard "I Want to Hold Your Hand" by the Beatles, that just explained the life to me. Like it's such a different dynamic that I think that's a really good point though. It's something that we still have to deal with. I listen to Korn. If I listen to Korn, I hear "Blind" or whatever, one of the songs on the first record. Yeah, like that still takes me back to, man, I was in college, and I was just this Indian kid doing a zine and blah blah blah, like all these difficulties, and it's like I listen to it now and I'm like, that visceral feeling is still there.
Yeah. And you made it through that time, and you're still here. Yeah.
Right. And
the other like kind of new metal tie to this record is obviously the other single that's out is "Cross My Heart," which kind of has that nursery rhyme, old school Chutes and Ladders, kind of taking something from your childhood and bringing it up, and obviously you've made "Cross My Heart" and "Hope to Die" your own in this one.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of people were surprised by that one, because it's probably the most different out of all the singles to anything that we've done. Because I really wanted to try and not do too much singing on this record. Like, I love singing, but I like singing happy songs. I like singing pop music. I like singing just things that I'm not directly emotionally tied to. I've always felt like, for me, metal, when I sing, it's a sad thing, and I prefer to scream, shout, talk, rap. It's just complete personal preference. So yeah, when we were doing "Cross My Heart," I wanted to try and explore those sort of more talking and frantic shouting and all sorts of different techniques to get the point across. And I think it surprised a lot of people, but it's probably one of my favorite songs on the album for me.
Do you find it difficult to transition between the singing and the screaming? Because, I mean, your singing voice is incredible, but like your screaming voice is very guttural, for lack of a better term. It seems like a really hard dynamic to, or just, I don't know. I can't even imagine like live how it must be to push your vocal strength to such an extreme one way and then shift over to a totally different kind of thing.
That sounds like an absolute asshole. It's actually okay.
I can do it on my
He's
sleep.
just the best at everything ever. That's all.
But what I will say is that it's the breathing that's like the main thing that's difficult. Like the actual technique and doing it is fine, but like I have to remember like there's two different types of breathing really when you're doing both techniques, and I'll run out of breath so quickly when I'm doing singing because I sometimes forget that like, oh shit, yeah, I'm not doing screams anymore, which I feel like I have a lot more control over. I need a lot more air and a lot more, I don't know, just sort of control when I'm singing. So that's where I struggle a bit. And I've got asthma, so it's not a good pairing.
And she smokes cigars, and no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So do you have like an inhaler off to the side of the stage, or on the bass cabinet or something?
Sure, good question.
You do, yeah. I have to keep my inhalers on me all the time because I have to take a lot of steroid inhalers because I've got the lungs of an 80-year-old apparently, which is great when you're a vocalist.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, at the very least, at least a lot of bars and clubs, at least as in the U.S., like they don't allow smoking inside, so that's at least got to help out a little bit,
Yeah, we're the same over here, and we always put on our rider as well, like no smoke machines, no things like that. So it's all good.
You don't get the cool fog machine open though, like.
I know that's the only gutting thing. Like our lighting engineer, he's like been testing loads of different types of ones to see if it will not give me an asthma attack. We haven't found one yet, so we need to try and find one.
Now you just come out with like an oxygen mask and just make it look all creepy and Marilyn Manson like. It'll just be totally practical, and then like all the fog goes away. You take it off, and you're like, all right, great, here's the show.
To be fair, that's a really good idea. Yeah,
actually not bad.
Show, I swear.
You heard it here first, folks.
Well, let's dive into your top 5 new metal albums of all time here on newpod.notfest.com. So start out. Are we going to go 5 to 1, or do you just have 5 blanket ones? How do you want to do it?
5 blanket ones because I just couldn't decide. But I think there's a top 2.
Okay,
for sure. So I'll go with my top one, which is System of a Down, Toxicity.
Oh, yeah, definitely can't go wrong there.
It's pretty standard, but this album, I could probably quote every lyric from front to back, and I've probably listened to thousands of times. It was like one of my favorite albums growing up, and I just loved how weird it was. Like at the time when I discovered it as a kid, they were a band to me that were always a little bit of an outcast in like the core community, because people were like, oh, they're just weird, like they make weird noises and their songs are weird names. And as somebody who was always picked on for being a bit weird and a bit different, I was like, yeah, it's really cool. And yeah, I just love Serge's different take on melodies as well. Like he just brings this whole different like singing scale that's not in major keys. It's in keys that we don't sing, on this side of the world. It brings like a whole different level to the vocals. It's so beautiful, and obsessed with that album.
That's a great one.
Yeah. No, let me ask you this real quick. Just in the scope of new metal, I mean, System, like you said, was always sort of an outlier. What elements of this record do you feel like fit into this kind of new metal genre that we've sort of weirdly created?
Honestly, it's hard to say to pinpoint it exactly, because one song you'll hear it and you'll think, oh, okay, that's a metal song, blanket metal song. And then other ones, I'm trying to think, for example, I should have brought the listing up with me. They'll just sort of just have some like random shouts and like screams, and you're like, whoa, where did that come from? And I think a lot of it is the crazy vocals, honestly, the way that they just sort of vibe off each other, and it goes from just being, really beautiful singing to suddenly shrieking, screaming, or something really, really random that makes no sense whatsoever, but you're like, yeah, that hits hard.
That's a good one. What's your next album?
My next one is, right, I can't decide between the two, but it's the same band, so you guys can choose. But it's Slipknot, either self-titled or Iowa, but I can't choose. I can't choose.
That is a tough choice. There's no doubt about that, especially out of those two records.
But again, two of my favorite albums growing up.
Let me ask you this. Which one did you hear first?
I heard Iowa first.
I had a feeling.
So I was born in 94. So Iowa is like, and obviously it came out in 94. So it's like, oh, this came out when I was born. Like, I feel connected to it.
Iowa came out in 2001.
Yeah.
Oh, no way. Ah, damn it. Oh, maybe it was the self-titled that came out in 94 then.
Nope, 99.
Yeah, 99. They were a little bit later. Korn self-titled would have been 94.
Yeah, Korn.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I was going to say, Korn came out in 94.
Absolute noob. So well, that's ruined it for me.
No, we're all good.
No, I'm joking. So that was the one I heard first, and then
not for nothing.
Then
you were what, 7 when that came out? I mean, that's still pretty impressive to like hear like. I was 26 when I heard. I mean, I was like 24 when I first heard the first record. You know, like I couldn't imagine being like 7 and being introduced. My fucking head would have exploded.
Well, I grew up with a metalhead mum, so like I had single parent, and she was like, she was like Slayer's ultimate fan. So I grew up with like these songs and these artists just being played around me all the time. So. Yeah, I did listen to a lot of music that I probably shouldn't have listened to at a very young age, but
you gotta love it.
Yeah, but I think the thing for me is that on the self-titled, it's Eyeless. That is my favorite Slipknot song in general. But then as a record overall, Iowa, it's just hits different.
No, I can definitely see that. It's definitely when I first heard Iowa, I remember it just being like, you knew it was still Slipknot very obviously from Pulse of the Maggots and People Equal Shit and all these kinds of things, but but there was just a eerie darkness about it that to me I was like, wow, like this isn't just the first record, a second version of the first record. It's darker, even just the title track. I know it's like 28 minutes long or whatever, but it's like, it's just so, it really does kind of put that real dark pall over the whole record. So I could see people getting like, especially if that's your first introduction to Slipknot, What
did you guys like think of Slipknot like when you first heard their albums? Because obviously now the way they're seen now is so different to how they were seen 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. So what was it like when they had released Iowa or their self-titled?
I have sort of a weird kind of story with them. The first time I actually met Corey and Clown, they actually assaulted me at a concert. Which was really weird. So I was working at a company, and a friend of mine from Roadrunner, because I used to intern there in New York, and then I moved out to Los Angeles. And he was like, hey, I think you're going to love this new band we just signed called Slipknot and blah, blah. And they sent me a shirt and said, People Equal Shit, with the barcode. And I was like, sign me up. I love it. And whatever they sound like. And I happened to be wearing that shirt at a Static X concert on Halloween of 1998. And these two guys like threw me against the wall and started threatening me. And I was like, I don't know what the hell's going on. They're like, oh, my name is Corey and this is Sean. We're in Slipknot. We thought you were in a band that was trying to rip us off. And I was like, I don't know who you guys are, but okay, sure. They gave me their cassette sampler, which I still have, where it had like the demos to like Eyeless and Sick and everything. And I just remember being like, I was driving home with my girlfriend at the time, and she was like, what's the matter with you? Because I was like kind of staring like in such disbelief, because I was like, you don't get it. This is going to change things. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, no, like this band is all wrong. Like because when you look at the picture on the cassette sampler where they're all like kind of just, standing in front of the dilapidated carnival kind of thing, I was like, this is all wrong. This is like psychotic metal. But at the same time, like you could hear, when you hear Corey sing, you're like, this is not usual. This is not your usual thing. And then when they got on Ozfest that year, I was working for Static X, and it was just this insane, like, Static X, Slipknot, Rob Zombie, but there was no YouTuber at the time. So all we could do is sort of wait until they sort of were coming around, but all we kept hearing was little bits and pieces. And then when they finally played in Los Angeles, which was the last date, they went on at 9:30 in the morning on the second stage. And I just remember getting there, and it was like you could hear the opening music playing, and it was me and like 2,000 people just literally like full on sprinting to the other stage to get there as quickly as we could. And they only paid for 20 minutes. Like that was their only set. It was just a 20-minute set. And it was, and they were just beating the shit out of each other on stage, and they were just launching themselves into their kegs. And it was just pure fucking chaos that you just sat there and you're just like, I sat there and I was like, this is it. This is exactly, this is the metal that I want. This is what I'm looking for in a lot of ways, because it was like, you know, I've been into Slayer, I've been into Metallica, I've been into all this stuff, but this, and even like Static X and System both came out in that same year in 99. You know, so it was kind of like, oh, System cool, oh, Static X cool, and then just Slipknot just came in out of nowhere and just kind of like wiped the floor with everybody. And it was just, and so it was great to listen to Static and System, but like when you listen to Slipknot, you were like, this is a particular this is a particular hell I'm putting myself into now, you know? And just like you say, like kind of the trauma euphoria, it's kind of like that, where you're just like, you know, you don't,
like
you're
a
not,
car crash. You don't, you can't look away.
Right. But you're also, it's like you felt those lyrics so hard, so hard, you know, and so visceral. So that's why for me, and then that following January, I moved back to New Jersey and got a job at Roadrunner. So my first thing I got to do was work with Slipknot on the kind of the tail end of that first record. But it really, I mean, and then work all through Iowa. And it was just like, for me, they are that band. Like, that's why when you said like it's either Iowa or the self-titled, I'm like, girl, I am right there with you. It was a tough choice. Yeah. You know, make that shit a double album and put it on, you know, put it in one set, and let me just have one whole record of that. You know? Yeah,
exactly.
I think when one of the first things I ever saw with Slipknot was obviously the photos, and then I saw like a Rolling Stone review or something, and the very first line said, "Now this is an insane clown posse," which I thought was a great way to kind of like say like what Slipknot was to begin with. And then we would go and see. I saw them open for Machine Head Coal Chamber, so they were second of 4. Yeah, and like Machine Head Coal Chamber had their gear on stage, so then Slipknot set up in front of them, and it was just complete madness. And it was also like the air around that band was, you know, Machine Head Coal Chamber at the time was kind of on a downfall. So like as soon as Slipknot played, the place cleared out. Like it was crazy, like how quickly, you know, people left that venue. And just watching the show, you know, you've got 9 dudes, you've got you know, people playing kegs and drums. And I mean, even down to like the bass player was left-handed. I was like, everything is just stimulating me.
Everything is
everything is crazy on stage right now. It's like, well, like, you know, you've got everything going on. And then there was still that era around them too that nobody knew who they were. Nobody knew what they looked like except for Roe, because they beat them up. But, you know, but
what can I say? I was the lucky one.
But I'm saying, like, I went and saw them in like a smaller club show in like Birmingham, Alabama. And like everybody walking around, you're like, is that guy in Slipknot? I wonder if that guy's in Slipknot. I bet that guy's in Slipknot. You know, you just wanted to like assume everybody was in Slipknot. So they kind of had that air about them that, you know, Ro and I are big Kiss fans, so we didn't get to have the makeup era, non-makeup era, wonder what Kiss looks like without the makeup. And I got that with Slipknot. I'm like, I wonder what they look like without the masks.
Cool. And I guess Sleep Token are like the modern version of that now.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
Who are they kind of thing? Yeah. Oh, that's so cool to hear. Is it true that they like, I don't know if you guys ever saw it, but did they throw up on stage? Because I always hear that.
I would see. Yes. Yeah. I mean, they would literally beat the shit out of each other.
Well, especially on that first Ozfest, you know, like I heard that they didn't clean out their masks at all. So you're talking about playing in Phoenix heat, you know, Houston heat, and it's just sweating and gross. And these were all homemade masks too. So whatever they happen to smell like before even they got into it.
I dread to think.
Because I'll never, I mean, that San Bernardino show, when I first saw them in 99, I mean, yeah, it was 9:30 in the morning, but it was still like 85 degrees. And it's not like they're not just like, crooning into their microphones. It's like these guys are jumping all over the place. And their stuff. And I had heard that Sid threw up in his mask. I heard that Clown threw up in his mask. It's like, I mean, the sheer smell, it must smell like a third world country in there. It's just a horrible thing. But I heard that, because that was also my thing, was just watching them like attack each other on stage, like watching Sid and Clown. Like I remember being like, are they fighting? Because like
do I call someone?
Because like Sid would like jump on Clown, and it was almost like he was like wailing on him, and I'm like, that doesn't look fake, but it was just it. But at the same time, you could tell nobody else was reacting to it, so it was almost like, holy shit, it's like part wrestling, part metal show on stage, like they're having their own, like whatever's going on stage, that's them, there just happens to be people watching.
That must have been so cool to watch. I wish I had been born in time to watch that.
It was even just watching their ascension it was so ludicrous, because like, sorry, not to take this too long, but like System of a Down came out, and I remember they sold like 2,500 records on their first week, and everybody was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like nobody thought they would do that. And then Static X came out, and they sold like 5,500 records, and it was like a friendly rivalry. Everybody was friends, and they were like, oh, haha, take that, System. And then Slipknot came out and sold 15,000 their first week. And we were all like, wait, who? Wait, what? And then it was it was a runaway train right after that, where nothing could really stop them. So it really was it really was an interesting time just to see this insane progression. Because like when I first started at Roadrunner in that January, they had just come back from their first UK tour. So they had just destroyed the UK. Crushed it, and they came.
Your
back.
mom was loving it. I'll say.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she was.
Oh, I'm sure she probably saw them at the what's it, Brixton or whatever. That was kind of it. Was just being there and kind of watching it and being inside of it at the same time was it really was a very unique experience. But the best part is that to hear that people like you were and your mom were listening to it back then, it shows that we were all, weirdly in a hindsight way, we were all doing our jobs really well.
And I mean, really like those albums were like the main albums that made me want to be a vocalist. So it's crazy to think that you were there watching it, and here we are today chatting. So pretty cool, pretty damn cool.
It really is. It does feel good in that like kind of weird, usually generational gaps in a way. You're kind of like, oh, these kids and their EDMs and their whatevers and their dubsteps, but it's like it's cool to see that like who which of those fans sort of came out of it and really helped on. So I think that's super amazing. That makes me feel really good.
That's really cool.
All right, so next album, Megan.
Who else is on your list?
Okay,
I knew when you asked Ro about. Sorry, I knew when you asked Ro about not Slipknot. I was like, oh, this is gonna be one.
No, but the thing is that I love listening to stories like that. So no, it's great. So my next one is a little bit different. It's gonna be Evanescence and Fallen. So this was kind of my first introduction to a woman in a band. Really, I'd grown up being a big fan of Gwen Stefani and No Doubt. But they never hit the heavy spot for me. Right. So when my mum showed me Evanescence, I thought it was really cool because there are some tracks on it where she does a little bit of screaming. And I was like, whoa, that's so cool. Because for me, that was the first time that I'd heard a woman do that. So yeah, it was really cool. And obviously when it comes to like that sort of scene, she chooses to dress very feminine and things, and it's such like a feminine energy brought to such a dark sound, and it was something that I'd never seen or heard before. So as like a little girl, I was like, whoa, this is cool. And then to just make everything better, she's just pitch perfect. Like I don't think I've ever seen her perform a song badly ever. Just the most beautiful, talented voice. And I caught them at Download in the UK a couple of weeks ago, and their set was amazing. And then they got on stage with Bring Me for the headline as well. And it was just like, how are you this good? Like, how can you be this talented? Yeah, exactly. For years, you've never been shit. Like, what are you doing? What are you taking? Tell me.
Right. Almost unfair. It's like, how are you allowed to get away with us doing this every night and sounding awesome?
I know. Not fair.
And there's obviously the video of you doing the solo performance.
Don't. You know what? I begged that guy to take it off YouTube, and he just won't reply to my messages. So unfair.
Well, it is up there to be seen.
Yeah.
But no,
that was my college course. Actually, that was I was in school, and we had to upload the videos to YouTube for to be assessed. And the fucker still won't take it down. It's not fair.
It's good to have those kind of memories up there. You'll enjoy it one day, like when you're like, oh, that video's still out there. I'm gonna watch it and show my kids, or whatever. But it was funny because when I talked to the publicist, I'm like, see what she wants to do her 5 favorite new metal, and I'm like, I started thinking about it. I was like, oh yeah, she did that thing, the Evanescence song back in the day. So I wonder if she's gonna throw Evanescence on the top 5.
Yeah, I mean, they're not necessarily a band I actively listen to anymore, but they're a band that had a big effect on me growing up, and I have a huge amount of respect for Amy Lee. So yeah, I think it would be, stupid not to mention them. But were you guys ever into them? I mean, I know they're a little bit sort of, I don't know. People feel very 50-50 about them. Yeah,
for me as a band, I never truly got into them. Obviously, I love Amy Lee's voice. They were more of an inspiration, being from a small town in the South. I mean, they're from Arkansas, and that was back in the day, back before YouTube and Spotify and the internet could really push a band from Arkansas. I don't know how familiar you are with the States, but Arkansas is not a big one.
Right.
And, there's not a big scene down there. So it was kind of cool to kind of see a band kind of come from nowhere like that and truly, have that. Impact on so many people, including yourself, to kind of show that women can be in metal. And I never truly got into Evanescence, but I think she is incredibly talented.
Yeah.
I'm very much in the same boat. I mean, I think especially when Evanescence came out, I was so knee deep into, all the music that was coming out at that time, Oh, we lost you.
Nope. She didn't like our answer to listening to Evanescence. You don't like Evanescence.
Screw you guys. Megan, come back.
Megan,
we're sorry. Whatever we said, we're sorry.
We said you didn't like our answer to not liking Evanescence. You're like, screw these guys.
I'm so sorry.
No, but it's basically that, I was just neck deep in all of this music. So there was so much of it coming out at the same time. And when you're working a Slipknot record and all these kinds of records, Il Nino and all that, it felt like it was on the lighter side of what I was into. However, I did see them what was it, last year, the year before at Aftershock, and this definitely was me. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It really dawned on me. I mean, maybe it comes with the years of being able to compare it to all this other music now and all the things that have happened since that record came out. But
yeah,
I definitely have an appreciation of it. Absolutely. I mean, we saw them at Sick New World, and my wife really likes Evanescence, but I was watching, I'm just like, yeah, I was like, you can feel that the energy within the crowd was undeniable. And to me, whether I like a band or not, I look at that energy as like, okay, if you don't understand it, understand what it's doing to other people. Understand that okay, maybe it doesn't hit me in that particular way, but look at all of these people, all these girls, all these guys, everyone who's singing that song, and especially during Wake Me? It's called Wake Me Up. Is that the name of it? Sorry. The big
Bring Me to Life, yeah.
Bring Me to Life, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Wake Me Up.
Yeah, there we go. It's like, that's one of the lyrics. But it's like, but when when I was watching everybody else singing it, it's like everybody who was singing it was like had their fists in the air and eyes shut and screaming, and I'm like, that's the sign of something that, yes, maybe I don't understand, but I absolutely cannot. It's something that has to be appreciated in that regard. And I think that's really, and I feel that because she was such a conduit for so many, for so many girls to think that they can do this, for, guys to think that this is okay, etc. It's, that takes on a much bigger life to me than, oh, did you like the record? It's like, no,
Right.
it's not about that anymore. Like the viewpoint is much wider. The scope is wider for me now, so so even though I didn't like it when it came out necessarily, now when I watch how it's affected everybody throughout the years, I think it's phenomenal. And she has one fucking hell of a set of pipes, man.
It's insane.
That was the thing when I saw them at Aftershock. I was like, okay, like this is something I wasn't expecting at all.
Yeah.
And really nailed every one of those notes. And you can hear that. It's almost like Rob Halford. Like you can hear that power in their voice still. It's like, like to me, that's always really impressive. So that's kind of my thing on them.
Yeah. I think it's a good point to make as well. Because like when I was at Download, there weren't loads of bands that I really wanted to see, but I wanted to watch them because there's a lot of hype about them. Like, Motionless in White, Lorna Shore, bands that are like really hyped up at the moment, but I'm not necessarily into, but I wanted to watch their sets because I wanted to see that atmosphere and I wanted to see the talent. And It was so nice to just stand back and be like, I don't know your songs and I'm not connected to you, but I can appreciate how good you are at what you do.
Right.
And I think that's a really cool way of looking at music that you don't like, instead of just jumping on the hate wagon, just stand back and appreciate, the musicianship and the talent and the community that it creates. And I think that's a good way of looking at it.
I think that's funny. Back to System of a Down was one band that when I first heard Sugar and a few songs, I was like, I don't get it. It's too cartoony. It's silly, whatever. But then I saw them live. And I walked away a lifelong fan. I was like, I get it. I love Surge. Whatever they do, I'm going to be there for. That was the band for me that once I saw them live, I was just like, I'm 100% in.
You just get it. Yeah. It's weird. It's sometimes all it takes is, maybe being there and just standing back and looking at it and being like, I get it now. Like,
right.
Yeah, I get it.
Because there's such a visceral difference between seeing the live show versus hearing it on record.
Yeah.
Record's it's got to be produced right. It's got to be mixed. It's got to be, all these things that the labels want. But then when you feel that real visceral, raw energy, and I think that was the same thing, just to bring up Slipknot again as well, this raw, untamed energy, that can't be contained on a CD, like that's, and when you feel that, that's when it really, for so many people, that's when it really clicks.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Next album, Megan.
The last album. Yeah.
I think it's two more.
Oh, two more.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know how you guys are going to feel about this one, so don't judge me. But Limp Bizkit,
love it.
Still sucks. Their latest album.
Nice.
This conversation's over.
So I have always been a sucker for bands that are hated. I don't know why. If people like shit on a band a lot, I'm like, well, I'm going to go support them. Like, I'm going to go watch them and listen to them, because I just don't like it when people hate on bands for the sake of hating them, or for the sake of jumping on a trend, or for like, I don't know, just because they're a bit different. And just sort of, I grew up in like a very, I don't know if you guys use the word chav in America. So it's like, I don't know what you'd call it. So it's like Adidas tracksuits and like I don't know, just like you grow up in the mean streets and you're a bit of a, you're a bit of a chav. You wear Adidas tracksuits and hoodies, and but you like metal.
Okay.
And so Limp Bizkit were like all the people I hung around with, but it was also the music I listened to. So it was like, oh wow, they wear the clothes, but they're doing the heavy music. And then, that whole added, we, jump on the hate train. It just made me like them more. And you can't deny that no matter, Fred, he might not be the best lyricist in the world, but like, my God, he's good at pissing people off and
yes, like, he is.
Yeah. And like getting attention and breaking boundaries and doing things that make people talk. And I sometimes think, you know what, you get a round of applause, because even though you're not going to win prizes for best technically written album of all time, you've done something that nobody else has done, and I really appreciate that, and the sort of the no fucks given attitude. But yeah, their latest album, I really enjoyed, and his whole like dad rock vibe is pretty cool now. I quite like it.
I love the fact that people think that that's like his real hair. I'm like, dude, Fred's been bald since the 90s. Like, he didn't just show up with a sweet, hairdo.
Right. Suddenly he's like a Rogaine spokesperson. It's like, look at all this hair.
Limp Bizkit has always been one of those bands. I've loved them since day one. I saw them before $3 Bill Y'all came out, opening for like Faith No More, and they opened for Korn and Helmet one tour.
I'm so jealous of your generation. I'm so jealous. I would have loved to have been there. That's so cool.
Yeah, and they've always been a band that even during the times where people hated, it was cool to hate them. Now it's cool to like them. It's kind of like a full circle thing for them. Right. But even if you saw them live, you would be into it. It's kind of that thing where even to this day, like I'm in a couple of groups for like the festival that's near me, Louder Than Life. And they always post like, what's your favorite band to ever play? And Limp Bizkit played in like 2014. And still people are like, Limp Bizkit was the best set ever. And they were in the middle of the day. It wasn't even like a headlining set. So they've always been a crushing live band. And if you go to a Limp Bizkit show and you didn't have fun, that's on you.
Right.
Yeah.
That's very true. I remember seeing them open for Faith No More in like a shitty club in New Jersey way back in the day. And it was funny too, because, back then people, they just didn't know what to do with them. Yeah. Like it was one of those bands where they're like, well, they rap, but they're heavy. Put them with Faith No More. Sure. Why not? We'll just put them with Faith No More. Yeah. People needed something to categorize them with. And for the longest time, they just couldn't. And then when they sort of broke big, everybody was just like, you became like either like, oh, you're a Limp Bizkit red hat backwards, khaki wearing, wife beater wearing kind of guy or girl.
Yeah.
That became, in a weird way, that almost became the stereotype for nu metal is you have to look like this guy. Or if you look like this guy, it's pretty obvious you're nu metal, so in a weird way, it's kind of weird. In a weird way, like Fred Durst is the creation of nu metal as a slur, but also now it's like, it's the slur that we all own. We're like, I fucking love $3 bills, y'all. Are you kidding me? Like that record's
right.
Like those guitar tones that Wes Borland has are so like, it's funny when you just listen to the guitar tones on that first record, they're like super evil sounding. Like they just sound really creepy and weird. And I'm like, man, no wonder this guy tried out for Marilyn Manson. Like, in a weird way, it fits so well. But then when he started doing his own thing, and then you had the kind of combination of like him being all weird and makeup, and then Fred doing his thing, it's like, it really was sort of this crazy conglomeration of stuff that nobody could put their finger on.
It makes no sense, but for some reason it works.
Yeah. It's kind of like the system thing. It's like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like I remember when I first heard System, it was like, okay, so we're talking about like circus music. Like this is like circus metal. Is that what I'm going with?
Yeah.
Like, but like Josh said, it's like, but you saw them live, and you're like, this is not circus metal. This is not anything like I've never seen before. And I think that was kind of it. Unfortunately, I think that Fred did just become too full of himself, too many yes people around him, especially once Faith kind of made it big, and Nookie especially once that made it big. I feel like everything became very Fred centric, which also sort of led to more of the stereotypes. But I think you're right though. I mean, I saw them in a tiny club out here in Los Angeles about 2-3 years ago, where they played it was kind of weird. They played a $3 show, but they didn't play $3 Bill Y'all. Which I was like,
that's a bit weird.
Really? I mean, they played a few songs, but you would think a $3 show, you would kind of maybe I'm the asshole, I guess. I don't know, but it was really incredible to see them still pull off that energy in this teeny tiny little club. They play the Troubadour out here, which only holds like 300 people, something like that. It's like really, really small, and just the power that came off of that stage, it's like, it really was like veterans that owned it. And I think that, you know, I'm really happy that they're sort of experiencing a new renaissance, to be perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you on that one.
And yes, Still Sucks is a great kind of comeback record. I agree with you 100% on that one.
Yeah, really enjoyed it as a fun album.
Yeah, definitely is.
And the last one.
Okay, so I had like a list, and I was like, I don't know who to put in the last slot, because nu metal is probably like one of my favorite genres, and I was like, oh, who do I put in here? So I was tied between Flyleaf, Korn, and Linkin Park, and I went for Linkin Park, Hybrid Theory, because that was when I realized that you could actually, and not in a Fred Durst kind of, you know, almost funny way, you could rap in metal, and it was emotional and it was cool. And like, I grew up and still now just as much of like a rap fan as I am metal. I probably listen to more rap and hip hop and R&B and grime than I do metal. So when I heard, you know, Hybrid Theory and just Linkin Park bringing that extra bit of something else into their music, I was just like, this is so cool. And again, as a kid, it just blew my mind that there was actually bands that were bringing in other elements, and it wasn't just battle jackets and Viking horns and, you know, that sort of thing, which has its own place and is, you know, brilliant in its own right. But as a kid that grew up in the countryside, but then I had loads of friends from the city and I had loads of metalhead friends, so I was like this cluster of rap kid, metal kid, and farm girl. Linkin Park ticks a lot of boxes. So yeah, I would go for Hybrid Theory.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, and I, you know, in the 8 years I've been podcasting and whatnot, Linkin Park is the band. No matter what genre, it's always like my first favorite band was Linkin Park. It could be deathcore, it could be, you know, the craziest metal you've ever heard. Like, actually, the band that got me into music was Linkin Park. They are the 100% gateway band to all of this.
Yeah.
If you know, it's crazy how much that band comes up as what people wanted to be, and they see that band because, again, Ro and I in the scene at the time, Slipknot and Slayer. I mean, you know, Limp Bizkit, everything else coming out. Linkin Park, when they came out, I was just like, it's all right. You know, I was like, yeah, it's cool. You know, but then the, you know, 25, 30 years almost later, I'm like, damn, that band really changed so many lives.
They were definitely a phenomenon. It's funny. I had just gotten off of Ozfest 2000, like played the last show in San Bernardino, and a friend of mine was like, oh, hey, you got to come and check out this band I'm working with called Linkin Park. They're going to be huge. And I was like, all right, great. So went and saw them, and I was like, okay, like I've been on tour with, you know, Methods of Mayhem and Shovel and all these bands. And I was like, this, all right, it's just kind of more of the same. And that's like one of those times where people, you know, a lot of times people will be like, oh, Ro, he knows metal. He knows what's good. And I was like, and I remember being like, all right, whatever. This is like no big deal. And then the next thing you know, it's like this insane phenomenon. I was just like, I don't know anything really, you know? But I mean, the cool thing was at that, you know, around in mid 2000 is when I started doing street team stuff with Roadrunner, and that really was, you know, Linkin Park was one of those beginning street teamer kind of bands, you know. So it was a way. It was they really were the conduit. They were like the safe conduit to get into the more extreme metal. I mean, you had your kids who were like Slipknot, yes, and that's my thing, and I'm going to go in that direction. But with Linkin Park, it was like, parents liked it or didn't mind it because there was no swearing. There was screaming, there was no swearing. And that, you know, I mean, you had Slipknot going, you know, fuck this, you know, fuck everything you stand for. And parents were like, no, I don't want you. That's not good. You can't listen to that in the house, you know, but you could listen to Hybrid Theory and be like, and, you know, the parent couldn't really say anything, you know? And I think because of that, they opened a door, they paved a way, for so many bands to really do it. But in a weird, unfortunate, negative sort of way, they were also the ones that sort of ushered in this, not intentionally by any means, but it kind of ushered in sort of the nu metal glut that sort of happened, because when them and Slipknot with Wait and Bleed and System, when they all hit the radio, suddenly that was the money signs for a lot of the record labels. And that's when they were like, we need a Linkin Park. What's your single? What's your single? Because before that, like at Roadrunner, we didn't really worry about radio singles. We had Deicide, we had Fear Factory, we had Machine Head, we would try to get them on the radio, but it was never the driving force for anything. But after Linkin Park happened, suddenly that once it was kind of like the combination of Linkin Park, Static X, System of a Down, Slipknot, like all of them taking this heavy music and suddenly sort of penetrating radio that sort of made it and turned it into this sort of thing. So on the one hand, I go, Linkin Park is to blame, but it's like, but that's not in hindsight now, it's not.
I get what you're saying. Yeah,
it's not a blame game. But it did open it. It cracked it wide open. For
sure. I think they are like, they get hate because they are such a, they got hate because they're such a good gateway band into this scene. But then I think about it in the way that if you can get somebody who never thought they'd like metal to listen to bands like Linkin Park, then they might go on and listen to the heavier stuff, and then they might go on and listen to even heavier stuff. And I think that's the way of getting the really heavy music far more appreciated and more radio play is by those gateway bands doing the work for the heavier ones. So I suppose it depends on how you look at it.
Right. I think it's kind of like wisdom too. Like you never quite, when somebody's giving you a chunk of wisdom, it's like, it never hits until you actually have to experience it. And I think it's sort of the same thing at the time. It was kind of like, oh, who are these guys coming in out of nowhere and doing this thing? And then it's like, now I'm kind of like, well, if it wasn't for them, then there might not be a Lorna Shore. There might not be a Suicide Silence. There might not be a lot of these bands.
Exactly.
So you got, I like to look at it from that point of view of just like, well, yeah, that was my 25-year-old brain thinking that, but my 48-year-old brain now understands that without that, you can't have, you can't have these bands. You can't have your band, you can't, have bands like Spirit Box or whatever. It's like,
exactly. I mean, like Bring Me the Horizon, one of the biggest bands on the planet now, they started because they loved Linkin Park. Right. So it's we've all got a lot to thank them for, really. Yeah,
in hindsight, especially.
And looking at Hybrid Theory, Paper Cut is a jam. Like that's still one of my. Every time that song comes on, I'm like, all right, this one gets a pass.
To me, it's a lot like listening to when we were doing break the cycle with Stained. It's like every song is a hit on this record, and there's a song. There's not one song, like even as somebody who wasn't even a fan or who was like, oh man, Linkin Park. It's like you still hear it, and you're like, I know that song, and I know that song, and I know that song, and I could probably sing that song too. It's like you just never realize just how much it permeated the culture, the way it did, and I think that does make that record, whether you like it tonally or not, like that makes that record a very super influential part of the whole scene. So I think that's a great addition to your list. Now, I do have to ask though, because you did say between Flyleaf and Korn and Linkin Park, what Korn record was on your list?
Self-titled.
Nice.
Good.
Yeah. But weirdly, for some reason, my mum must have just not had them on her radar because I didn't discover them until I was much, much older. So I'd been listening to like System of a Down and Slipknot and stuff, but I knew that Korn were there, but I never listened to them. And I'm so annoyed at myself because they probably would have been my favorite band growing up because I just, and listening to it now as an adult, I just adore them. Like, I just love Jonathan's vocals so much, like, and I can relate to the quirkiness and the weirdness and the no shits given when it comes to what they write about. And I didn't put them on because I still class myself as a new fan, if that makes sense. But just incredible. And I watched the documentary recently about the Woodstock festival, and like I went and like binged loads of videos of their set, and just stupid, insane. Another groundbreaking band that brought metal into the mainstream.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember back then also, there was just like Limp Bizkit. Nobody knew what to do with them. You know, everyone was like, oh, Korn, you mean that band that sounds like Rage Against the Machine? And I'm like, have you listened to Rage Against the Machine? Like, they don't, but it was just, nobody knew what to do with a band like that. I mean, the first time I saw them, they were open for House of Pain and Biohazard in New York, you know, and people were like, why are they singing songs about Ring Around the Rosie? And I'm sorry, did this guy just come out with a fucking set of bagpipes? What the hell is happening here? You know,
I know.
You know, you're talking a New York hardcore crowd is like watching a guy with bagpipes on stage and just looking around at each other like, what are we looking at right now? You know, so it really was just such they just came in and out of nowhere in a lot of ways, and just everyone was just like, what are we even looking at? You know, I am kind of curious though, when it comes to your mom, like what, like,
what's her phone number? Is that where you're going?
Yeah. Digits. I think having a metal mom is a really unique perspective for anybody growing up, you know. So I'm kind of curious because especially when Korn hit the UK, I mean there was like a lot like Linkin Park and Slipknot where they hit so hard, you know, they hit like a friggin', you know, like a missile, and so I'm just kind of curious as to like how that kind of escaped her radar, or like kind of like, was she just into like Slayer at the time, so something like Korn was just too weak? Or I'm just kind of curious about that. Just know.
I mean, I need to ask her really, because I mean, what the hell, Mum? Like, come on.
You're with it, Mom.
But I think it was probably that she's very like set. She has like her favorite bands, and she doesn't like discovering new ones very often. So it was like, she had her Slayer, which was like her heavy fix, and then she had her Slipknot, which was like her new metal fix, and then and she had Evanescence. And I think somehow throughout all of that, she maybe thought, I'm not bothered, I'm not interested. Right. But yeah, crazy to me, because like they're just probably, I mean, I don't want to say anyone's better than anyone, but yeah, they're up there. They're up there.
Well, as we kind of wrap up, and I kind of want to tie all this together with Negative Energy, the new album from Vexed. Make sure to get it. Yes. It is out now as this interview is out. The one thing with Korn was growing up, you know, Korn came out, I was 14. And so, I mean, I was like perfect prime pocket high school, you know, starting to start angry, teenage angst, you know, all these emotions and changes. And, you know, growing up listening to Metallica and Megadeth and Slayer, you know, it's all about corruption and, you know, just all these crazy world events that I don't know anything about. But like when Korn comes out and they're singing about, you know, actual trauma and issues and actually having emotions and feelings in their songs, I'm like, whoa, this is, I can relate to this. Like, and I think that, you know, Negative Energy kind of does that today. You know, somebody in high school is going to hear it and they're going to know what you're talking about and be able to relate to what you're talking about, because, you know, emotions and things like that are obviously universal. So like when it comes to listening to Megadeth, Metallica, and, you know, you're watching the Peace Sells video and you're like, I don't really understand war and what's going on, all these conflicts and things like that, and like worrying about the news and all that, you know, that's one thing. But when you actually get into like someone's emotions and get inside them, you know, that's when, you know, you've kind of connected on a different level.
All right. It's very true. I mean, I remember I was writing my zine at the time, so I was in college when that record came out, and I just remember hearing like Jonathan weeping at the end of Daddy. It was just so, like, I was just like, it felt like when I was listening to it, like, should I be listening to the, like, I feel like I'm listening to like somebody's like I'm listening in on some therapy session where I shouldn't really be there, you know. But I mean, that was really what showed me like where you could really pour your emotion out, you know, and still have it be not considered a sign of weakness, in my opinion. But, you know.
That's so cool. Like, especially for you guys being men, and it's not cool to be emotional. A band like Korn just suddenly made it like cool.
Yeah,
it's okay.
They made it okay, you know.
Yeah, they made it okay and totally acceptable to sing or scream or shout about. So yeah, I'm fully like diving into the world of Korn at the moment as an adult. Gutted I missed it as a teenager, because they probably would have helped a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to writing our own stuff, I've always found that doing personal things is my easiest, favorite way of writing. And yeah, I think if anybody can listen to it and get something out of it on a personal level, that's just such an added bonus that yeah, I can't really comprehend it, to be honest. But yeah.
Well,
awesome.
You're still on your journey to comprehend it in a weird way, you know, especially with this new record. So I think you're well on your way.
Thank you.
Well, awesome. Let's wrap up on this. You know, kind of what's the future, touring plans, you know, all that good stuff.
So at the moment, we're soon to announce some headline tour dates. Sorry, only in the UK though. Sorry, guys. And then we're working on trying to get out further afield across the pond, hopefully next year. But nothing's confirmed yet. We're just waiting on that band to want to take us out and support them. So yeah, we're all the cogs are in motion. We just got to wait for something to go. But at the moment, we're sort of we've got a couple more festivals to do this summer, and then yeah, we're going to wrap up the year with some headline dates.
Very cool.
Very cool. Well, guys, make sure to check out Negative Energy out now. Megan Targett, man, this has been absolutely fantastic, and we had 25 minutes and we just hit an hour. So sorry for taking up all of your day.
It's all good. I can talk about new metal all day, so anytime. And thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you.